5 Live Boxing.
So welcome to the 5 Live Boxing podcast. Day or two after a very lively night at the Copper Box in the Olympic Park. It was one of those nights that had it all. A nasty finish, a controversial finish, revenge, heartache, blood, a disqualification, some nastiness, some aggravation. It was all there. It all happened. It was brilliant. And by the way, Anthony Yarde is now officially back. And we'll hear from him in a few minutes' time. Now, we'll also talk about Conor Benn and Katie Taylor fighting this week in Liverpool. Now, I have to go through my Rolodex every single week and select the perfect dance partner, the perfect person to come on and share their thoughts with me. And well, it inevitably had to be Barry Jones again. The last time he was here was about 17 months ago, but that's neither here nor there. Barry, welcome back to the show. Let me ask you this just very quickly. You and I have been around Anthony Yarde a lot over the last few years. Watching that fight at the weekend, him against Lyndon Arthur, what were your early thoughts? What were your first thoughts?
I've never seen him so good. That's what I thought straight away. This is a fight that's improved dramatically from when I saw him last. He really was. He was the same Anthony Yarde, but much more focused, much more intent in his work, and he was just brilliant.
No, he was just brilliant. As I said there, Barry and I have been around Anthony Yarde a long time. We used to have a show on another channel. We used to get him in on the sofa. I think we got him in after his first fight, after his fifth fight, after his eighth fight, and it's an absolute delight and a pleasure to drag him back in again to our radio sofa. Anthony, it was some night, my friend.
100%, man. It's good to be back. It's a good feeling, and it just feels like as you said, it feels like how it was before, and it feels like I'm reborn. So it's a good feeling.
You know what, Andy, and I'm not going to be an after-timer. When I sat with you on Thursday, when I came down to the BT studio and I did that 5 minutes with you, and afterwards, I wasn't joking. I said, you seemed like a different man. There was a calmness about you. There was a serenity. You were relaxed. I mean, is that a fair comment?
100%. I had time to get my mind right. And you know what? I don't like to watch any build-ups. I don't like to watch any comments or interviews before the fight, because you can get your emotions involved. But there was a lot of respect between me and Lyndon, but a lot of things he was saying, I didn't really like it, you know, in terms of like talking about excuses and, you know, my family and things like that. Because I'm not. If I was making an excuse, I would be saying I'm not fighting because.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I'm saying? It's not that.
Yeah, absolutely, I do.
I'm just letting people know that it's not easy going out there and trying to perform when you've been through what I've been through. So there's always been that respect. We haven't spoken since the fight. Last time I messaged him congratulations, because he messaged me about my family saying, I'm sorry what you've been through. So I messaged him saying congratulations. He hasn't messaged me anything since the fight, but I really didn't like him mentioning that whole excuse thing when it comes to my family. So,
well, we'll put that to bed now, because I know stuff that a lot of people don't know, and I know you could have used a lot of those excuses, because you could have used that as an easy excuse, because it wasn't just, you know, we know it was the suffering was a lot more intense, and a lot more numbers, far more numbers than we're led to believe. So we'll put that to bed, because I'm clearing you 100% of even attempting to use an excuse. That never happened. Let me ask you about the fight, Anthony. You started like it was the 13th round. You started fast. You put him under pressure, body and head, both hands. That was a furious pace. Were you convinced that it was only going 4, 5, 6 rounds? Because that's a hard pace for anyone to hold for 12.
It's just when you've trained a certain type of way, and you're confident, you know. I'm a big light heavyweight, so I made sure I was so disciplined. You know, I've been a lot more disciplined for like the whole past year, in terms of like watching what I'm eating, monitoring my body, how I feel when I'm making the weight. My work rate and training, I was supremely confident. Tunde said to me in the corner, he looked at me and he goes, I've never met anyone as fit as you. You're fit. So then I knew as well there was a time where him using his right hand was going to work against him. I just knew it.
You told me that on Thursday. You told me that before the fight.
Exactly, because everyone knows the only time you're open to get hit is when you're throwing a shot. Or the only time you're most open to get hit is when you're throwing a shot. And I knew the atmosphere would get to him. He was nervous at the weigh-in, because again, this is a massive fight. It was a big build-up. It was highly anticipated, and he knew there was going to be a crowd there. So when it's in front of a crowd and there's, it's showtime, it's a lot different.
And could you tell that you were hurting him, or did it just feel like he was, it was mounting pressure? Because I wasn't sure, even going into the fourth round, I wasn't sure then if you were hurting him or just putting him under pressure. What was your feeling from being inside the ring?
When you're in the ring with someone, Barry would know about this. When you're in the ring with somebody and you hurt them, you know immediately. Most times.
Yeah.
And the second, when he started talking to me, after I hit him and I see his eyes crossed, and I just nodded at him, I said, okay. And even when I went back to my corner, I smiled and I said, this guy's not going to last 6 rounds, because that's what me and James Cook spoke before we came out. And he goes, for the first 6 rounds, it kept reminding me, the pressure you're going to put on this guy, I don't want you to take no backward step. I don't want you to ponder, I don't need to wait, I don't want you to sit there and be thinking, we're going to do what we've been doing in training. Tunde just said, look, because again, me and Tunde do the pad work, whatever. James does all the talking and the running. So we were just doing that. I kept moving my head, being jittery, and I knew that he was aware of my power. So when he came in close and he started wrestling with me, I just, in my mind, I felt like saying yes. I felt like saying yes. Because I knew at one point I was on the land. And then when I did hurt him and I see his knees buckle, I just knew it was a matter of time.
I would say, I've covering your career earlier on, I always praised you about, you never rushed your work. You were always getting things early. But I think as you step up in levels, you were waiting for opportunities.
Yeah.
But Saturday, you created opportunities. I think that was the difference. That was the difference. The most impressive thing I've seen, rather than just waiting, because you got the arrogance of a puncher, and rightly so, because you can punch. Now you just wait your turn, and when it comes, you get him, and he won't take it. But I think you Saturday night, it's like you realise, I can't wait. I got to force the mistakes, and that was the best I've seen you. You were a different animal to what I've ever seen before. I think I don't know, that's the blueprint to you becoming a world champion is with that sort of pressure, the way you box. I thought it was just outstanding.
Thank you, Barry. I appreciate it.
No, it's absolutely true. That I mean, that the concept that you were making him make mistakes. You were forcing him to have to work. You were forcing him to think constantly until, in the end, a couple of decent shots and he was down. And he was looking at the referee. He failed to beat the count, but you had enough time in that round to finish him, Anthony. That's my gut feeling anyway. Had he been allowed on at 9.5 seconds, you had enough time in that round.
And I'll be honest with you, boxing's a very brutal sport. I hit him, and again, the referee's in there. There's so many fights I've seen before, big fights, and you can tell by the boxer's reaction. Maybe he had a bit left in him. Give him a chance. Lyndon didn't want to carry on that fight for a split second. When you get hit with a good body shot, because I hit him with the first one and I see his knees buckle, and then that's why I threw the exact same shot. I tap, and I threw the exact same shot, and I said, if he gets up, sorry, but I'm going to hurt this guy, because he's going to protect his body, but I'm going to go for the head, and it's going to be vicious. So when the referee stopped it, the referee done a fantastic job, and you saw by Lyndon's reaction afterwards. He was sitting down for around 5 minutes afterwards. So people saying about he should have be allowed to go on this boxing, people can get hurt in this sport, and the referee done a good job and stopped it.
Yeah, it looked to me, Barry, that that in addition to being hurt and pushed back and bullied all over the ring, it looked to me at the end of that fight with Lyndon sitting hunched in that corner, as Anthony just said, that Anthony had broken him as well as beating him. He'd broken him, and that doesn't often happen. You can lose a fight, but you didn't leave the ring broken against Kovalev. You just left the ring beaten, correct? You didn't leave the ring broken last year against Lyndon. You just left the ring beaten. Whereas I was looking at Lyndon and I was thinking, he can't believe what's happened here. He's a bit broken in that ring. Yeah,
and again, he's a very good fighter. He's got again, people have spoken about this jab. He's got a world-class jab. It is world-class. It's a very good jab. It's hard to read. It's hard to predict. But you need more than a jab in this sport. And especially when someone like myself is gonna come. I've got a good jab, I'm sure I landed more jabs on him in the fight because it's the way I chose to fight the fight. As I said to you before, I said to you in the interview, and I said to everybody else, the only thing that made that fight so close and got me the split decision loss was I was making the wrong choices. As Barry said, I wait a lot of the time, and my mind was not there for that first fight. I can't say it enough.
Yeah.
My thought process, when I'm fighting somebody, usually I'll be like, they're that kind of fighter. I know what I need to do. With Lyndon, I wasn't even aware of the rounds. My mind was just outside of the ring. I was looking up at my sister and my niece. You know, I wasn't thinking about the job I had in hand. You know, all I was thinking to myself was like, this is comfortable. He hasn't really landed no effective shots. He's landed a couple of jabs. You know, I'm pushing him back. It's fine. But I wasn't reading. This is a sport this is my life, and this is why I was so upset. Because when I analysed it, I was like, what was I actually doing? You know, it was frustrating that I had to go through that. But even David Hay came in the change room afterwards and said, you know, that had to happen because it brought this out of you. Barry said it as well. It's the best he's seen me. So I thank God. I thank you guys as well for the appreciation, and yeah, I'm back.
I would say that I got to quickly that people say a loss is a lesson, and I don't know. I think most of the time a loss doesn't make you; it does break you. I think it takes away your confidence. It can change you from to a different fighter. And usually, when you get beat, you're never the same. Like take it with the Kovalev fight, because that was just that was a gamble you could not turn down. That was it was, and you almost pulled it off. But the Arthur fight was a loss that could have been literally could have ruined your career.
Could have, absolutely.
But I think it was. I think that was the best thing ever happened to you. But looking at your performance Saturday, you really did learn from that loss more than any fight that I've seen in recent years. Learn from a defeat. You learned from that loss.
100%. It's because I know my ability. I know my ability, and I was very, I was just upset with the outcome. I was upset with how I fought the fight. It was more of a frustrated feeling. That's the only word I could use, because I was like, I could have upped it. I could have hurt him at any point. That's all I kept saying to myself. I was watching it back, and I was like, I kept shaking my head saying, what am I doing? In the last round, you only saw an outcome of my mindset. I said, my mindset was, it's a 12th round now, you can go for it. In the cover of the fight, your wrongdoing was you went at the wrong time. Do you get what I'm saying? You went at the wrong
of course.
time. And then this fight, when I fought Lyndon last year, my mindset was go at the right time. You're winning you won the 11th round convincingly. 12th round, you need to dominate. Try and knock him out now, because it's the 12th round. If you go into a world title fight again, you've been the 12 rounds. It was just all the wrong mindset, but I'm back. My mindset's back. I learned my lesson, and this is a sport of entertainment and stopping people.
Right, let's now do the colourful stuff. Let's deal with the first thing. Your personal cheerleader at ringside, who assured me that you wouldn't be allowed anywhere in East London had you lost. Dizzy Rascal's there, my pal Dizzy, okay, cheering you on, throwing every single punch, living every single second, hollering like unbelievable. That's the first thing. He was in good form. Now we've got to talk about the position. We've got all these terrific light heavyweights, okay? Now, I've got to tell you, before Saturday night, the best performance this year by a British light heavyweight, and Barry, you can disagree, you can do what you like, the best performance by a British light heavyweight this year, before last night, was when Buatsi stopped the tough kid Bolotniks. I put it to you, not just because you're here, that you beating Lyndon Arthur was a better win than Joshua Buatsi stopping Bolotniks. Now, that doesn't mean that you're a better fighter than Buatsi. It doesn't mean he's a worse fighter than you. But I think you've had, obviously you would agree, but what do you think? Was Anthony Yard's win the other night the best win by a British light heavyweight this year?
You'd have to say it is, Steve, because it's not just the performance, which was phenomenal, and Arthur's a good fighter, by the way, and a really good fighter. And so it wasn't he beat an unknown. He beat the guy who just beat him. That's the so that adds a different mindset to it, a different pressure that Buatsi never had against Bolotniks. Bolotniks is a good, tough fighter, by the way, and people might not have seen him, but he has had a very, very hard man. But Arthur's a guy who, stylistically, is not a great matchup for Anthony because of that good jab, because he sits on that back foot, because he tries to take away your power. So, stylistically, that's always going to be a hard match for Anthony. Unless he fights the way he did Saturday, when he took all out of the equation by taking away the jab and making it 30. So for me, tactically and technically and everything about the performance was pretty much perfect for how Anthony had to fight to beat him. And when a fighter does that, you can see about the corner were over the moon, because if that's what you worked on, and I think it was, I don't think you put a step wrong. And that's all you can ask from your fighter. So I think that has to be the performance.
Yeah, I completely and utterly agree, which is good, Barry, because if you'd have said no, I think that Buatsi beating Bolotniks, it would have been a bit awkward, but that's neither here nor there.
Which is a good win, which was a good win, by the way.
It was a good win, but here's the way I looked at it. This is the way I've reasoned it, because I've been debating with a lot of people since the win. This is the way I reason it, okay? Bolotniks is a tough guy, and that was a good stoppage by Buatsi. But Bolotnik's best ever win at light heavyweight wasn't better than Lyndon Arthur's best ever win at light heavyweight, which was beating Anthony Yard last year. So, no, it's the truth. So that's the way I looked at it. That's neither here nor there. Now, Anthony, in theory, you get the winner of the Jan 15th fight between Joe Smith and Callum Johnson, which is taking place over 1 round or 2 rounds or maybe 3 in a telephone box somewhere in New York in January. That's an absolute shootout. But do you have a gut feeling on what might happen in that fight?
No, I don't. My fight's, been settled now, and I can look at, other fights and things like that. But I have no idea about that fight. I haven't seen too much about each fighter. But it should be a little tear up. I know the most I know in terms of credentials is Johnson. I think he dropped Beterbiev. So is that right? So he showed he's got the power. He can do things. And then Smith. I'm sure he stopped Hopkins, right?
Yeah, stopped Hopkins, and he's fought a lot of good guys, tough guys.
Well, a good guy. So again, he's very experienced. It's in his hometown. I'm sure it's in America. Sorry. So Johnson's the away fighter, and it's a different country. Different country does play a difference. I have no idea how it's going to go. I will actually tune in for the fight. I don't usually watch fights and things like that, but I want to tune in for the fight because it's a potential future fight. And it's exciting times.
And just finally, before I let you go, we've all been at the Copper Box a lot of times, and let's not lie. The Copper Box has been sometimes awful. The atmosphere's been awful. Tyson Fury fought there in front of a few hundred people. Suddenly, the other night, Barry, I'm telling you, you missed the beauty. The other night, it was transformed into a bear pit. I mean, you must have liked that because
you could feel it.
Because let's get it right
on TV. It looked fantastic.
The Copper Box being suddenly a great venue, that's great news, and it's good news for you. Because we could listen. The reason I say it's good news for you, we could have your world title fight there. Why not? If you pack that out for a world title, that'd be enough.
That would be a dream come true. That would be a dream come true.
So Anthony Yard there, and if you're wondering why we didn't say goodbye, it's because we lost him. He vanished. We just lost him, and we waited a couple of minutes, and we never got him back. Barry, sometimes when you get guests on, you're never critical of them because, you've got to be polite. But that there today, it was hard not to be like you and I were, which was just full of praise. I know you mentioned it at the top, I thought it was a flawless performance from Yard on Saturday night against Arthur. Because going into the fight, I was not convinced he could do that. I was convinced that Arthur could win another points decision. I wasn't convinced Yard could do what he did.
No, of course, and there was a feeling that Yard could knock Arthur out because Yard could knock pretty much anybody out. So
absolutely,
and so there was always a feeling that he could stop him, but there was never a thought that he could do that straight away. No, you say he got to start faster, but starting faster as well gets you into trouble because you walk, especially with someone with a good jab and good feet that Arthur has. So you walk onto jabs all the time. You walk onto uppercuts because you're trying to get low, trying to come into attack. But and he mentioned himself there, Anthony, the head movement coming forward, the jittery movements all the time, hitting him hard early, making him feel so Arthur lost a bit of confidence in throwing that jab as sharp and as snappy as maybe it was in the first fight, and he controlled the pace from the offset, and stylistically, as I said, that's a fight that's always going to be hard for Anthony Yard, a tall guy with a really good jab who leans on the back foot. It's always difficult for a smaller guy to hit the target clean. And he took that away from him. He boxed the perfect way that he had to box, and especially a guy who's beat you as well, Steve, because there's mental scars there as well. There's a lot of things in play there that he had to overcome, and also another thing that we haven't talked about, people were betting against him for the first time in his career. I know it didn't matter.
Really good point.
It didn't matter in the Kovalev fight. People didn't think he would win because. No, that was literally a roll of the dice. I've stepped up 3 levels here. A world title in
a well paid roll of the dice as well. Let's not forget that as a well paid roll of the dice.
Nothing to do with that, but I just have to say about Anthony Yard, well paid. He could have took step aside money for the same money.
Bingo.
And let Kovalev box Canelo.
Great point, Barry.
And he never. And that's when I knew he was a real fighter because I would have took that step aside money and then get the guaranteed shot of the winner, which he would have had, or a vacant title in London.
Which he could have had, yeah.
He would have been a world champion in an easier fight with 2 paydays, and he said, no, I want to box Kovalev in his home city, by the way. That was the difference. But so that was a risk. This one now was different. Although people are betting against him, I think you get beat again. I think you get outboxed. And that's something that he's not used to. And he overcome all that. And I think that made him a better, more focused fighter.
Yeah, so Barry, let me ask you a question. I sort of threw it out there. I mean, I think it's the best performance by a British fighter this year. It doesn't make him the best British fighter. I just think it's the best performance by a British fighter this year. So let's have a little look. There's Yard. If you do it this way, Yard, Arthur, Buatsi, Callum Johnson, Craig Richards, and Callum Smith in the mix. Okay, and that's in no particular order. I just read them out that way. Buatsi was meant to have a fight in a couple of weeks' time. It would have been a bit of a test, and it would have been a big gauge. And had he won that, that would have been possibly the best performance by a British fighter this year. I got myself in a bit of trouble by suggesting that Buatsi hadn't had a test. Well, Bolotnik's was a test, but as I pointed out when we were talking to Anthony Yard, Bolotnik's best win at light heavyweight is not better than Arthur's best win at light heavyweight, who was Yard. So with those 5 or 6 there, it's just quite simple. We need to see them fight each other. Or we need to stop all conversations about them fighting each other. Either save ourselves the problem or get on with it.
We've been saying that for 4 or 5 years. That's what it feels like.
At least 2.5, yeah.
But it's getting closer now, isn't it? I think the Yard-Johnson fight, if Johnson can get over the line against Smith Jr., then that fight will happen next year. And it'll be in London. And it'll be a big occasion. So, that's a positive sign, I think.
Yeah.
Buatsi, he's fantastic. And he was always the winner we felt was going to be the star of the division. He's stagnated a little bit, but he's back on a roll. Craig Richards, maybe, who don't really get mentioned much in the conversation.
Who deserves it after the Bivol, yeah.
It's probably had the best performance at world level because he almost he got very, very close to the line, didn't he? He
did
in the end, even though Yard and Callum Johnson had bigger moments in their world title challenges. Still, Richards throughout the whole 12 rounds was more competitive. So
yeah, that's a great point.
I always forget Callum Smith because he's moved up. So. Yeah. You have to put a number one straight away because he's boxed at a higher level, and beat at the higher level at the weight below. So you probably have to put him number one. But it continues to be a really good division where we can have real success at world level. If one of them can get over the line, then I think we have a real round robin of really exciting fights.
We certainly do. And just a quick word, Lyndon Arthur, as Pat Barrett said, will be back. So, he'll be back. He'll be back in the mix. And I'm going to throw a little line out there, and because I really enjoyed when he won the British title the other week, Dan Aziz, when he won the British title. Because what I really liked was that whole Marvin Hagler thing. How he does stuff like Hagler. He's got those crushed velvet shorts or whatever they are, and I find that a fantastic piece of respect.
I've covered most of Aziz's career.
Of course you have, yeah.
And I've always said he was like an 80s fighter because he had the velvet shorts, but he jumps into the jab like Hagler. That's why he looks like Hagler. The way I've never seen another fighter do it, but he does jump into that jab like a Hagler. He's not a Hagler. Hagler was an all-time great, but
Hagler.
He was again another guy who was tactically was perfect on his night against Hosea Burton, wins a British title, and we know now that gap from British to the other level is very, very short.
And just for those people that are still fuming that I might suggest that Bolotnik's wasn't the best guy beaten by a British guy this year, consider this. A couple of years ago, Hosea Burton went the distance with Bolotnik's, and yet Aziz stopped Hosea Burton. And we'll end the light heavyweight conversation here. If only the ending of the super welterweight stroke light middleweight fight at the Copper Box was as easy to end and understand and discuss and finish talking about as the light heavyweights. Barry, it was messy. It was ugly. Hamza Sheeraz, unbeaten. The young kid, a kid I personally really like, against Bradley Ski, a man who sat on our sofa in the old days even more than Anthony Yard. A fantastic, decent man. A man that was the British welterweight champion, lost his title, lost his way a little bit, and then lost his title, lost title fights, lost his way a little bit, had a bit of a break, came back, based now with Dominic Ingle. He was in, not necessarily as a gatekeeper, but he was in there as the underdog. And I thought he was given, for 7 rounds, I thought he was doing one of the finest performances I've seen for a long time. It was beautiful to watch for 7 rounds. Barry, pick it up at the start of round 8, Hamza Sheeraz, Bradley Ski. Over to you with a microphone, Barry.
Well, first of all, you've got to give Hamza Shariz his credit that even though he was massive, he was getting totally schooled, and that's the truth.
Yes,
He was getting totally
absolutely.
outboxed. He was getting out jabbed, and because he's so big and long for the weight, he's not used to being out jabbed. And I just
Couldn't believe it.
and the constant movement of Skeet was fantastic. But he stuck to his task, and the pressure was more intent, and then he hurt Skeet. He hit him with the left hook, and he's dropped him. And if he walks away and goes to this neutral corner, the chances are he might have stopped Bradley Skeet in that round or the next.
Absolutely.
But he doesn't do that. He gets carried away. He hits him. They say, I'm not sure if he was down or on his way down with one shot, but then clearly hits him with two heavy shots while Bradley Skeet is clearly
down
on his knees. Clearly, and whatever he said, I know the heat of the moment, but he's seen it and just for that split second hasn't cared, Steve. That's the truth.
Yeah.
So, that's there's not everyone. It's easy to jump on the referee in real time. It's hard to make a split decision, but that's a disqualification. One shot maybe on the top of the head. That's like calm down now. But two clear heavy shots. When the first one when he was going down looked like that could have been maybe on his knee.
Yeah.
Then you go, that's enough. You've got to be disqualified. Especially, it's not as if he was winning the fight. I can understand if he was though it shouldn't be the case. If he was massively ahead and dominating Hamza Shariz, then you would say, well, if you get disqualified now in a fight that he's clearly winning, but it's a fight that he was clearly losing as well.
Yeah. So in the 8th round, Shiraz finally drops Bradley Skeet. At that point, I've got it 5-2 in rounds to Bradley Skeet. So Bradley Skeet goes down, and as he literally touches down, he gets hit with one shot. Then he gets hit with another when he's clearly down. But it's that third shot. And again, Barry, this is all, we get the benefit of this because it's happening so fast, and the atmosphere is unbelievable. At ringside, there's not a single person sitting down. And that third shot, Shiraz takes a split second, not to look at Bradley Skeet, but to set his feet. Yeah. That third shot, that's a cracking left. And at that point, and Bradley Skeet's directly in front of me, 15 feet from my privileged position at ringside. And at that point, Bradley Skeet's body goes limp and he goes down to his left. There's all sorts of confusion then. The referee, Steve Gray, arguably the best referee we've got working at the moment, if not the best, joint first with 2 or 3 others, because he's brilliant. And I mean, let's get it right. He goes and he sends Shiraz to a neutral corner. He gives Bradley some time to recover. Bradley wants to recover, and he takes a point off of. Then he takes a point off of Shiraz. But here's the thing. Here's the debate. Should he have been disqualified instantly for that late shot, and should he have just done what people have been doing forever and ever? It's all fair game. Should he have just stayed on the floor and stretched out instead of trying to get up? Because had he done that, I'm convinced. I know Steve Gray would have had no option but to disqualify Shiraz had he stayed on the floor.
Well, maybe, but Skeet's got to live with that, and because he's such an honest guy. He knows that he stayed down when he didn't have to, even though he's been hit illegally, and he knows that as well. He knows if he sits it out, he's sat it out to get a win. Though he's winning the fight anyway, that was clear for everyone. Even the guys in the ring knew that, including the referee. But even though he sat it out, he did what most of us would do, and we'd get up. And if we can get up, we'd get up, and because you still think you can do a job, and maybe that. Yeah, it was an error in judgment looking back, but he didn't do nothing wrong. I just think that. You're told, Steve, that certain things are instant disqualifications, things that won't be tolerated. Back of the head,
absolutely.
Warnings, hitting on the floor, you're out.
Yeah.
So, and it's not as
biting somebody, you're out. It's not even up to debate.
Sometimes you just go who throws a flurry of punches and the guy's going down, but you continue with your shots and you're in your rhythm. So you can pull back the stroke of the punch and you hit him while he's on the floor. That happens. And you get away with it. You get a warning or a public warning or just come on now, mate. But he was already going down.
So Shiraz then has the point taken off him, but then the round has to continue. Bradley gets up. There's more pandemonium and chaos at ringside. But I've got to tell you, at this point, no one's screaming at me he should be disqualified. There's a bit of confusion at ringside. There was a little bit of after timing that takes place. So Bradley survives that round. But he's clearly hurt. He's really hurt. And then it's the start of the 9th round. Now, in the ninth round, it only lasts 58 seconds before he goes down again. And having watched it back, and I tend not to watch things back before I do this pod, because I like to work on what I've seen with my naked eye, because for 25 years, I can only work on what I saw with my naked eye. But I did watch that back. I did watch the 8th and ninth round back, Barry, before we recorded this. And in the ninth round, when he goes down again, Shiraz half cocks a shot to throw it at him. And I'm pleased he didn't. And then correctly then, in my opinion, the referee stops it. Heartbreaking for Bradley Skeet, who has put out a tweet since suggesting that the decision should be voided or reversed. And Bradley saying, I want a rematch. And I understand that. Shiraz has been a little bit quiet. Perhaps by the time this pod is published, perhaps by then Shiraz would have said something. I sent his people a note saying, why don't you say something? Just say Bradley's a warrior. I regret what I did. That's what he needs to say. Because let me tell you one thing about Hamza Shiraz. He is not a vindictive, nasty, horrible fighter. That was pure instinct when Bradley went down. It may have been a legal instinct, but it was instinct. Frustration. So it'd be nice to get an apology from Shiraz. It'd be nice to get the fight back on. But my gut feeling is that for Bradley Skeet, that was his finest night. Because I think for 7 rounds, that was the best I've ever seen Bradley Skeet fight. I really do.
That way, because let's be honest, he was put on. The match was made to make Hamza look good.
Absolutely.
Being a former British champion, boxed for the European title. But he's not the fight that he was. He's been hurt before, so you'll get him. And he's not a natural, super welterweight, so you'll get him out of there. That's what. And he's not a big puncher, so all those things, it ticked the boxes, as a good opponent for a young kid on his way up. That was the truth. But you roll back the years.
He did.
He's always had a good jab. He got a good jab and a long jab. Bradley Skeet's always had a well-timed jab. More than anything else, the timing of the jab's always been very, very good. And that's what threw Hamza Shiraz down on Saturday night. I think it should be made a no contest, and that would be the fairest result. You can reverse the decision and give it the win to Skeet.
Of course not.
Make it a no contest, and then hopefully Bradley can do what he did the last time, and hopefully for the Shiraz camp that they can get it right this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think there'll be more pressure on the Shiraz camp, Hamza and his men in the next fight than there would be on Bradley. But it remains to be seen what Bradley's got left, because that seemed to be a bit of a mountain for him. But got me thinking about disqualifications, Barry. I'm not going to go through a list because I didn't warn you. But I thought about some famous ones, and I can remember one or two. Some big ones on big nights, and I found a John H. Stracey one when John H. Stracey had sold out the Royal Albert Hall in 74 or 5, and I can't remember if I was at this fight. I think I probably was, because when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, I went to all of those Mickey Duff, Jarvis Astaire, Terry Lawler shows at the Royal Albert Hall in Wembley. Can't find the programme. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to lie and say I was there. Can't remember being there. But Stracey was the favourite. I don't know if he was unbeaten, but he was. He was the Cockney king, and he was winning the fight. And he got disqualified for hitting on the break against the champion Bobby Arthur, I think from Coventry. Then he knocked Bobby Arthur out the next year. But I found a better one that I was at, Barry, and I remember this quite clearly. Again, I think it was the Royal Albert Hall. He says, remembering it quite clearly. Can't remember. Royal Albert Hall. Mark Kaler, the absolute king of the East End. Okay, the West Ham's most favourite son, only number 2 rather to Bobby Moore, if you don't mind me saying so. He's 24-0. He's just turned over Roy Gums in a brilliant display to win the British and I think the Commonwealth title. He's walking away with the fight, and he hits Tony Serda after the bell, an American after the bell at the end of about the 9th round, and gets disqualified. Harry Gibbs, the referee, who was 217 on the night, disqualifies Mark Kaler. I mean, there's house fighters and there's house fighters, okay? But Mark Kaler was the greatest 80s house fighter, slung out. Forget your 24-0, son. Forget your world title aspirations. Forget the 6,000 fans you've sold. You're going. That's Harry Gibbs, by the way. Anyway. Barry, listen, it's a pleasure and a delight having you on. I'm not getting rid of your son. You're doing a full shift today. Now, that was last weekend. This weekend, we switched to Liverpool. And we switched to a couple of fights, one of which is an odd one because, like a lot of women's world title fights, you end up knowing an awful lot about one of the women, but not an awful lot about another one of the women. And that, of course, is Katie Taylor against a Kazakh woman called Firuza Sharapova. And then that's the sort of joint top of the bill. But the other side of the bill is Conor Benn. Okay, a different fighter to the kid Conor Benn from a few years ago against Chris Algieri. Now, Algieri, we all know, he might have fallen short in some fights, but he's still a big name. He's still a nice name. I think, Barry, and I'll put it to you, obviously it's a loaded question, I think this is a really particularly tricky night for Conor Benn if Algieri finds his rhythm and if Algieri fancies he can win.
Yeah, I think it's another great bit of matchmaking. I think that's not in a negative way. I think it's a great matchmaking, like it has been for Ben. I think Formella, Vargas, recently Granados, they've all been
wins. Yeah, great wins.
Perfect matchmatching, Steve.
Absolutely,
they're fights that he can potentially lose, but if he's the fighter that his company think he's going to be,
he has to win him.
He gets over the line, and he's produced better performances every time, I feel. And so this is another one of those. He's boxing a guy who's been a world champion against a real tough, strong pressure fighter in Ruslan Provodnikov.
Yeah, by the way.
Would just be Timothy Bradley. So, there's no, so there was no, that wasn't an easy touch to win a world title, by the way.
He didn't get someone from Belgium who was moving up in 2 weights. Not being serious. Yeah. He beat a really good guy who was on really good form to win his version of the title.
He totally outboxed an immovable object in Provodnikov. Yeah. He was absolute. He was a monster, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, man.
And then he went on so good wins, and he lost to good fighters like Khan and Spencer, if you will, and Pacquiao, of course. But he's a good boxer, and he throws a lovely uppercut, and he's technically sound, and he got good feet, judgment of the distance. He's not the mover, because he's not a puncher. He's not the dance around that everyone thinks he is. He'll push you back if he can.
Yeah.
But he's 37.
Yeah.
And he looked okay in his last fight. But he didn't look a vintage Algieri.
No, he didn't. But he did get 10 rounds back in August, and that's the key.
I think if you can back him up, if Conor Benn can back him up onto the ropes, then Conor Benn can win the fight. And I think he can. I think that's it. I think maybe the Algeria of 2014, then he struggles. But now I think it's a great bit of matchmaking where he has to maybe struggle in places of that fight, of course, and he might get outboxed every now and again. He might walk onto a few shots where he's overeager, but he's an ever improving fighter. Is Conor Benn, and he's not going to be technically the best ever. That's just the truth. But he has those intangibles like raw commitment, natural strength, and I think that will get him through. And also, he moves well around the target, Steve. His footwork's fast when he's close to you. So he hits you, and he'll get to the side, and he'll throw again, and he'll spin around the other side. So I think he'll be too much of a whirlwind for the 37-year-old Chris Algieri in an entertaining fight, I feel, as well.
Oh, no, without a doubt it's an entertaining fight, because Algieri, despite all his good looks and the fact that he does loads of stuff on TV and he's a really nice, presentable guy, he basically likes to fight like some kind of old 1950s Bronx brawler.
I thought you were talking about me then. I got confused.
No. I don't know what part of that was applicable to you, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, apart from the good-looking bit. Anyway, so he will have a go. And one thing I found out about Conor, who I've always had a soft spot for Conor, and I think he's developed on both sides of the ropes. I really do, immensely on both sides. Is that when he came out in the chief support to the Lara and Warrington fight, Maurizio Lara and Josh Warrington fight in Leeds the other month, back in September, when there were 20, 21 or 22,000 people there, and it was a great atmosphere. And he came out, Ben, and suddenly the entire place roared for him. Now, generally, when you fight like that, on a show like that, where the main attraction, who's the big ticket seller, is a hometown hero, the undercard or even the chief support get, polite applause. No, it wasn't polite applause. It was rapturous. People have bought into it. They've bought into him, and he entertains. And that's why I think that it'll be a fairly lively night in Liverpool. And I agree with you. I think Algieri will make him fight, and I think he'll make him look good. Let's move on just quickly to Katie Taylor. She's fighting this woman, Firuza Sharapova. She's lost the fight, Sharapova. She's 27, so she's not a baby in the game. Let's be brutally honest here. I think she's perfectly okay in this day and age for what passes for a challenger. But Katie, with her 4 belts, I think Katie wants slightly more of a challenge in front of her. That's my gut feeling with Katie. And Katie is fearless. She might be one of the most fearless fighters out at the moment inside our orbit, to be perfectly honest with you. I think she deserves more, and I hope she gets Amanda Serrano, who's meant to be fighting in Tampa in December. Let's assume Serrano does or doesn't fight then. Let's hope that she gets her next year, because the one danger with fighting people like Sharapova, who don't have a lot of pedigree, don't have a dangerous record, a record that really makes you stand up, is you can have a bad night. You can look bad. And Katie doesn't need that. Katie's getting to that stage at 35. I know it's only been 19 pro fights, Barry. Most of those have been competitive. So most of those have been world titles. So she's been in training camps. Plus, she's had 10, 11, 12 years to lead the revolution, the women's boxing revolution. I think that she needs big fights and big fights only, to be honest.
She does, Steve, but like every fight she's had, almost every fight she has been big. So, you know, she deserves, if anyone deserves a gimme, it's her, you would feel.
Yes. Okay, I'll give you that.
But
I'll give you that gimme. I'm sorry, Bob, for cutting across you. I needed to point out there because sometimes I forget the stuff we have to do here, which we call the sort of the housework. Basically, is that it is live and exclusive on 5 Live this Saturday evening. That would be Sharapova, Katie Taylor, and also Conor Benn against Chris Algieri. Final thought on Katie Taylor, because there are a couple of other fights I want to talk about quickly.
See, Katie Taylor, like Sharapova was technically quite good, by the way. So it's I think, but she's hittable. That's why Katie. Yeah. That's the difference. And she's stepping up to the big league now, and I think might maybe be like a rabbit in the headlights. You would feel. I saw it with Katie Taylor, and this is no slight on any of the women boxers in or around her weight. It feels how her decline goes is if whether she gets beat or not. She's been so much better than anyone else. And I say that because out of the last 6 fights, 3 of them have been very close.
Yes.
2 against one girl, no Pursoon, of course.
Yeah.
Natasha Jonas was a close fight as well. No, you might have thought she won them all, actually, but you might have thought she lost the 2 first Pursoon fight. The Pursoon fight 1 and 2, potentially. But they've been close. And that to me, maybe just that is an indicator that she's slowing down, or she's holding her feet too much, or she's not moving as well as she used to, whatever it is. There's a change in her. And it's not a change for the better. But she's still good enough to be the best. That's the difference. Yeah. But they're getting closer, Steve, because she's not. They're getting closer because they're going up, and she's coming down.
Yeah. Last time I spoke to her was in Leeds before one of her, or not in, I don't know where it was actually saying that. I've said it was Leeds. I've just thrown Leeds out there. The last time I spoke to Katie Taylor, we talked a little bit about how she had to change what she does, so she doesn't spar as hard these days. She monitors and changes. But I should just throw out that last November, she fought, I think it was an unbeaten woman called Miriam Gutierrez, who I think was unbeaten, or she may have lost one, who's really tough, who's the woman that's meant to be fighting Amanda Serrano. And it was a shutout. Katie made it look easy. So in all fairness to Natasha Jonas is joining that club of one of the best British fighters to never win a world title in male or female at the moment. No, trust me, she's not quite in the Harold Graham business, but she's really pushing. She's pushing to be in that top 10. So she's a good fighter, and Delphine Pursoon is a terrific fighter and a really decent woman. And that's on Saturday in Leeds, and it's live and exclusive on 5 Live. And on the same night in Dubai. And we can't get away without mentioning it. I've managed to say Dubai like it's not connected to Dubai. That's quite clever of me. A couple of world title fights, both involving British boxers. In one of them, Paul Butler, former bantamweight world champion, and a really nice kid, Paul. We've been around an awful long time. He's up against a guy called John Riel Casimiro. That's for the WBO bantamweight title. That's a really big ask, but before we talk about that, the top of the bill out there in Dubai, Sonny Edwards, who's just only 25 years of age. You feel like he's been around forever and a day, Sonny. And that's what happens when guys turn pro and have fights in places like the Tolworth Leisure Centre in front of a few hundred people somewhere in the middle of southwest London. Looked fantastic in his shutout win against the South African Maruti Matalani back in April to win the IBF flyweight title. This is his first defence. He's fighting a guy called Jason Mama, who there's an awful lot of talk about. When you actually study it and analyse it, you know, he's not some unknown beast, or that's my take on it. What's your take? First on Sonny Edwards, and then a quick line on Butler, Bal.
I think, Sonny's been fantastic. And for me, when he beat Ryan Farag, that's when he really stood up.
Great point.
Call, and I thought, this kid is not just awkward and tricky. He's got something a little bit special about him. Because he can hold his feet when he wants to, and he can punch harder than what you give him credit for, by the way.
Yep.
But
yeah, he does. He can dig a little bit in his own little way, can't he?
Yeah, but he just never holds his feet. He's always on the balls. He's moving, spinning, making you miss, and that's how he likes to fight. And that's the wizardry in his work. I think Mama's good and strong and can fight, but You need more than that. And I think the fight when Sonny won the world title proved that. You fight in straight lines, however tough and hard and strong.
Forget it.
If you fight in straight lines, you're not going to beat him. You need more to that. You need feints, setting traps, all these new modern words that we use to describe a boxer's tactics. You need all those things, Steve, to beat it. You can't just run at him. He will obey you. He'll spin you on your head, and he'll have you crying without throwing a punch. He's that sort of maverick about him.
Yeah.
But when he switches off, he's been hit a few times, and there's lessons there for him to be learned. But if he shows the same focus and determination he did when he won the world title, when he was flawless for 6 minutes, then I find it hard to find anyone who beats him, Steve. I do.
No. I do too. And
a couple of pounds above, it might be a different story. Real superstars are there, but right now at flyweight, I can't see anyone who can touch him.
And he was previously British super flyweight champion, so a move back there seems inevitable. And Paul Butler against Casemiro.
I used to have a love affair with Paul Butler, didn't I? Back in the day. Yeah, well, yeah, he was just beautiful to watch. He's technically fantastic. He's got a real vicious left hook to the body. Everything about him, but he's got miles on the clock. That's the word. And Casemiro, who also should have miles on the clock, doesn't look like he has. Yeah, and I think it's a really hard fight at this stage of their careers, especially Butler's career. Like, he's technically really good, and so if he can do a Bradley Skeet, then he can come away with a win. But unfortunately, I can't. I think at some point of the fight, Casemiro will catch up with him.
Yeah, I think you're right. It
might be early, Steve, actually, and I hope I'm wrong because I'm a Butler fan. But that's my worry for him.
And just to point out for those people that listen, that always like me to say exactly what belts people were fighting for. Let me just say that Lyndon Arthur and Anthony Yard were fighting for the Commonwealth light heavyweight title. I have no idea, and I'm not even going to bother to find out what Shiraz and Skeet were fighting for because there was a lot of pride at stake. But I will point out a little side note that Jason Mama is the IBF Silk Road flyweight champion. Yes, it exists. The IBF have built the belt. It is hopefully got lots of silk in it because it's the Silk Road flyweight champion. The IBF, who knew they'd be such history buffs? Barry, I've got to tell you something. I was at the England National Amateur semi-finals, the championships in Cannock yesterday on Sunday, and it was massive. 3 rings, 23 or 24 fights in each ring. Some unbelievable talent. People dreaming of the Olympics in Paris. People dreaming of the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham next year. Absolute joy. And I spent a lot of time talking to Amanda Coulson, who is the woman that never seems to get the credit she deserves. She was the pioneer before Nicola Adams, before all of them. She was the one doing all of the work. And I was having a chat with her and a young 60-kilo girl called Hannah Robinson, and I tell you what, it was so refreshing. This 30-odd bouts Hannah's had. She won through to the finals, which are this Sunday, and Amanda Coulson talking in great hope about the new weights that might be coming in at the Olympic level and the Commonwealth level. And it gave me a real confidence going forward, not just in women's amateur boxing leading directly to the pro game, but in the men's game. I saw 10 or 15 men there, Barry. I'll gladly text you their names and you can put that away. In 4 or 5 years, we'll know who they are. It was so refreshing. Such a brilliant day.
Forget about the talent, which obviously, don't forget about the talent. But I mean, the fact that there's 3 rings and 25 fights in each ring, that's the encouraging part. Because, remember, you and Mike, at the start of the pandemic, your biggest worry on the podcast was the amateur game. It wasn't that the pro game will survive. It was a worry about how it would survive because that's the way the sport is. But the amateur game, it was a worry that they were going to lose everybody because you lose it at 15. He doesn't come back to boxing at 18. He doesn't come back. So you lose that man or boy or girl forever. The fact that there's still so many back and entering championships, whether they're good or bad, is a really encouraging sign for the sport. That means we got the people coming through the gyms. They're still busy and they're still competing, and that means the sport will thrive. And that's forget how good they are. They'll all get better. The fact that that people are fighting it and there's a busy day and they need 3 rings for the championships.
Yeah, that's what I like.
It's unbelievable. That makes me so happy. Because I might have a job a bit longer. That's the most important part of it.
That's what. No word of lie. People said, and people looked at me like I was mad. People looked at me like I was mad. I said, what are you doing here? I said, I'll tell you what I'm doing here. I said, because over the next 10 years, some of these 75 boxers I'm watching here, or the 150 boxers I'm watching here, they're going to be the people that I'm going to be earning money from in years ahead.
No free lunch with Bunce. No free lunch with Steve Bunce.
You can rewatch Sunday's semi-finals on the BBC iPlayer, and trust me, you will not waste your time. Absolutely excellent. And then you can watch Saturday's finals live from East London on the BBC Sport app and iPlayer. Take a look. You're watching today tomorrow's stars. It's really that simple. Barry, listen, it's been a delight and a pleasure always having you on the show. Thanks so much. And I'll see you Saturday night in Liverpool for the fights there.
Yeah, can't wait. Looking forward to it. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Anthony Yard was a pleasure on Saturday night, winning the Commonwealth Light Heavyweight title from Lyndon Arth with a fourth round stoppage. I thought he was mightily impressive. The Hamza Shiraz and Bradley Skeet ending, well, we're going to be talking about that and debating that for an awful long time. Why don't you take a look at it, see what you think. And then as for this weekend, we've talked about Conor Benn and Chris Algieri. I like that fight, I really do. And also Katie Taylor against the Kazakh Firuza Sharapova. Paul Butler's up against it out in Dubai against John Riel Casimiro for the WBO bantamweight title. And Sonny Edwards, undefeated on Twitter, as he calls it, in 2,758 fights. He'll remain undefeated on Twitter forever. He'll also remain, I'm convinced of it, undefeated when he defends his IBF flyweight title against Jason Mama this weekend. Boxing is just relentless. Thanks so much for listening.
Let's get ready to rumble!
5 Live Boxing.